So in this parable about the rich man, what's the word you heard most? I, right? I. The rich man in the parable even talks to his own soul. I wonder if that's because he had no one else to talk to. Maybe everyone else kind of was fed up with him. But I think mostly what the rich man's speech does for us is really help us to understand an important word that we need to understand in our faith life. And I need 2 volunteers, real quick. I get 2 volunteers to come up. It won't take that much. You'll love this one. One more. All right. You can be again. You get to be the yes. It's all about me. I. This is the only thing that's important in this world. See? What's it spelled? Sin. That's the definition of sin, right? I am in the center of everything. It's all about me. That's what sin is all about. And in fact, it's like the whole world revolves around you, right? So if you guys revolve around me, we should go down here. You guys revolve around me. Come on, it's all about me. I'm in the center. Woo! Okay, you can stop. I don't want you to be busy. I know. But see, the south and the north, the whole world revolve around me. Now you fully understand what the word sin is all about. Okay? So remember this visual, and you'll remember what you're confessing about each and every week. Thank you very much. It's like we had 2 Vannas today, right? A Vanna and a Victor. All right. So, okay, sin is all about I in the middle. One understanding of this parable is then the sin of greed. Now Jesus says, be on guard of all kinds of greed. So this parable is clearly about greed. For one's life doesn't consist of the abundance of possessions, says Jesus. So hoarding possessions, considering abundance as salvation and things more important of God, well, that's the sin of putting I in the center of all. Because it's all about my stuff, my work getting it, and that it's going to save you, right? That the stuff you gather is going to be enough to save you. Of course, it's hard. You know, it's like thinking, well, what's enough then, right? And while this parable is certainly about the sin of greed, there's another way to understand this parable. And that's the sin of isolation from community. Because you see, not only is the rich man talking with himself, there's no evidence that there's anyone else who might have contributed. Probably had servants, family or something at one point, but there's no evidence of that. Or that he's going to share the benefit of these blessings of abundance with anyone. He talks to himself about himself and his efforts. Keeping everything for yourself, thinking that you're the only one that can save yourself, not sharing, not caring for others, that sense of isolation, that's also putting I in the middle. That's also sin. And if you remember, Jesus tells this parable in response to a break in community, a fight between 2 brothers over the family inheritance. He's warning about all kinds of greed. Greed that breaks our relationship with God, thinking you could save your own self with your own stuff. And greed that breaks our relationship with family, friend, and neighbor, thinking that you are able to do everything for yourself. Remember, Jesus encourages us to be rich towards God. That was the last few words, meaning to be rich towards God. But does God need your wealth? Does God need your good works? No. But our neighbor does, right? And we know what the greatest commandment is that Jesus teaches: love God and love your neighbor. As I was preparing this, I came across another parable. This one is a parable about long spoons. And it is attributed to another rabbi, not Jesus, but a more recent one. The parable goes like this. One day, a man said to God, "God, I would like to know what heaven and hell are like." God showed the man 2 doors. Inside the first, in the middle of the room, was a large round table with a wonderful large pot of stew. And it smelled delicious. And it made the man's mouth water. But the people sitting around the table were thin and sickly. They appeared to be famished. They were each holding spoons with very, very long handles. And each found it possible to reach into the pot to take a spoonful, but because the handles were so long, they couldn't get the stew into their own mouths. The man shuddered at the sight of their misery and suffering. God said, "You've seen hell." Behind the second door, the room was exactly the same. There was a large round table with a large, wonderful pot of stew that made the man's mouth water. And the people had the same long-handled spoons, but they were well-nourished and plump, laughing and talking. The man said, "I don't understand." God smiled. "It's simple," he said. "Love only requires one skill." These people learned early on to share and feed one another. God has given us lots of gifts to try to figure out how much is enough. We heard that first reading, and did I tell you, it's the reason why there's a tradition in the church that Ecclesiastes should not be read by anyone who is under 40. Because it's too hard to understand what it's all about. And it's really depressing to hear it. At the first service, a girl joined in the 5th grade ended up reading it. And today, we had a student who's going off to college. You know, all this in front of her. And then it's all vanity. The word for vanity means like, it's air. And doing all this work we want to do for ourselves, right? To keep us safe in the future, to be able to have that retirement. So what is enough? What is it that we need to survive? What is it that we need? Well, God has given us a couple gifts. One is the gift of these stories and parables to help us to understand, to correct our misunderstandings, and to remember the wonders of God's love for us. God has given us another gift. In the Bible, he talks about something else, and I bet you'll never, ever see it as a gift. If I were to ask each one, what is that other gift? And that is the gift of tithing. The tithing is a gift too. Because it helps us understand how much is enough. And the gift of tithe is 10%, right? And it's hard to do. And if you haven't been tithing, well, it's not easy to all of a sudden change to that, I understand. But if you ever receive a gift, it is so cool. Or when you receive a new job, it is so good to begin with the tithe, to give your first fruits to God, because it continuously reminds you that God has given this to you in the first part. God has helped you and created the interest that you have to be able to work, the strength that you have to be able to work, the luck that you have to have a job. And when you tithe, you're not only thanking God, but you're putting God first. Of course, if you want more financial advice from a pastor for what that's worth, it also helps put aside 10%, live on the 80. So it's a 10, 10, 80 is the best way to live. And I know I started tithing when I became a pastor. Before I got my first paycheck, I figured out what a tithe is and paid that each week. And it's amazing the difference it made. I tried it as a lawyer, but it was harder because I never knew what my income was week to week, month to month. When you're self-employed, you just kind of have to guess, and I tried to get as close. And it was wonderful both times. As long as I was striving for that tithe, I always felt like there was enough. Of course, that's not why you do it. It's not why you tithe. But there is that sense that I can trust God. And each week it just kind of done that. And that's a gift, I think, to help us understand what is enough. The gift is also these stories. But of course, you each know what our greatest gift is. And that is Jesus. Jesus is the priceless treasure that God gave us to help us to know how much you are each a beloved child of God. How much God loves you for just who you are. How much He gives you the chance to remember that love and to share that love with each other. It's not many who give us a second, third, or fourth chance, but God does. And it's only through Jesus. And Jesus is that priceless treasure. I challenge you this week not to tithe. I challenge you to think each and every day that Jesus is your priceless treasure. That's it. Do that for a week or two, and let me know how it goes. Amen.